If you can choose one story alone that showcases the power, the brains, the evilness, and the presence of the Master, you can choose from the classic series, the new series, or even from Big Finish. The choice is entirely up to you. But today, my name is Alex Goddard, welcome back to my channel, and this is my favourite Master story of all time. It's time for an in-depth review on the one and only, the Deadly Assassin. Through the millennia, the Time Lords of Gallifrey led a life of peace and ordered calm, protected against from lesser civilizations by their great power. But this was to change. Suddenly and terribly, the Time Lords have suffered the biggest crisis in their long history. This was the first Doctor Who story in its own history that we saw the Doctor going solo for the very first time. In the last story, The Hand of Fear, we saw the departure of Sarah Jane Smith as the Doctor got a call from Gallifrey. He had to return to Gallifrey, but when he was arriving to Gallifrey, he did not expect this. He did not expect a vision impacting his mind, a forecast, sort of foreshadowing, of killing the President. He had never met the President, he had no intention in assassinating the President, but he knew that he was going to assassinate the President no matter what, and he was going to face the highest charge on Gallifrey. In front of everyone, he was going to be trialed and executed. He had to provide proof in very little time. And so, the story began when he was travelling to Gallifrey. He had a prognitive vision, which is sort of like a process, where the Master stole the DNA extraction from the Doctor, from his databank, and he popped a forecast of assassinating the President and beamed it into the Doctor's mind. So the Master set up everything in part 1, practically and almost perfectly, ready for the Doctor to assassinate the President. It was an ingenious plan from episode 1. In episode 1, you're intrigued to what this whole thing means at the very end. And when you see the cliffhanger as the Doctor shoots the President, you think the Doctor has done something that he should have done, but he couldn't control himself. The Doctor did not do it because he wanted to prove himself that he did not do it, and yet you still saw him that he killed the President. However, in episode 2, we see somebody raising a staser next to the President, and the Doctor was trying to aim for that staser, but unfortunately, the targets were fixed. The gun was fixed to shoot the President on sight. He wanted to shoot the staser, but he instead shot the President, and everyone saw him. Everyone saw him committing the highest crime on Gallifrey, and looking at his criminal record in the past, that he has a massive criminal record, universally, as we explored his databanks, and the fact that many Type 40 TARDISes are no longer in operational. They're obsolete, which means that Gallifrey is still changing its rules and still changing its laws for many years. And so the Doctor had to provide with some proof. He said that the Master was framing him for some apparent reason. He's a mathematical genius, a brilliant in extratonics. He had this prognitive vision, and almost the Master had the Doctor trapped where he wanted him. And everything of the Master's plan was falling into place. But what he didn't know is that the Doctor, before he was trialed and executed, he provoked Article 17, which was a brilliant strategy from the Doctor. He knew he had to provoke that article because he was claiming a legal right to be one of the elected to become Lord President of Gallifrey, but even giving him a state of liberty right. And that was perfect. He had a maximum of 48 hours to live before he was tried and executed. It's better instead of 3. That was his biggest sigh of relief, because the Master knew that he had to prolong the Doctor's life for some time, and so he had to go into the Matrix to find who bypassed the signal through the Doctor's mind to transmit that forecast of killing and assassinating the President in the Doctor's mind. He knew somebody had access to his databank, but only one could have had key. The Master had a key. There was a record on the Master, but the Master destroyed that record because he wanted to remain anonymous. He's doing everything for his own survival, so he doesn't get caught. He remains suspicious, and that is perfect for this master. For Roger Delgado's master, he would do everything in plain sight. This master though, whilst on Gallifrey, adds to the drama, adds to the scale of this story. You could say that Peter Pratt could do this not on Gallifrey, but in another story. I would completely disagree with you. The fact that he's on Gallifrey, his home planet, the fact that he's willing to destroy his own people, his own planet, for his own survival, that creates incredible animosity. Dislike for the Time Lords, dislike of Gallifrey. He wants the Eye of Harmony for himself, and he will stop at nothing. He will have help from a company of servants and a couple of guards with his own hypnotic power. We all knew that from Roger Delgado's time as the Master, but he uses it here again. Uses Chancellor Goff as he goes into the Matrix instead of the Master. The Master talks to Chancellor Goff. He guides him, knowing where the Doctor may be, ready to kill him at any cost. The Master knew that he had to die in the Matrix, and if the Doctor died in the Matrix, his plan was succeeded. All he had to do was achieve the Sash of Rassilon and the great key to access the Eye of Harmony, Rassilon's star. And that had all of the regenerations waited for the Master to tap into and to revive himself of all of his regeneration cycle. That was his amazing plan. And the Doctor nearly foiled his plan. At the end of the day, the Doctor defeated Chancellor Goff in the Matrix. And we have to give credit to the producers of Doctor who created a Matrix like no other. It was outside, and obviously they had to work in extremely difficult conditions. I've got to say, for filming all of that on film is incredibly impressive. You've got to give credit to the train scenes, to the scenes where they've been drowning, or even to the greatest game of hide and seek, using helicopters, using trees to your advantage, poison. There's been loads of advantages, especially in that Matrix. It's completely a psychedelic world full of illusions. You don't know what is real and what's not. And we all know that Chancellor Goff would do anything to destroy the Doctor inside the Matrix. Because once you die in the Matrix, you die as your normal self. Once you're connected to the Matrix, whatever thing happens to you, you will die in that Matrix and you will stay dead. That was the Master's intention. But Chancellor Goff, unfortunately, he was suffering himself. The Doctor managed to poison him, managed to blow him up or injure him, wound him with that grenade trap. The Doctor knew that he had to be very, very clever, so Goff had to up his game. And when it came to the final scene of part 3, we all saw that amazing cliffhanger, and it was just so violent to see the Doctor physically drowned. And we all know what happened afterwards. If you want to know more about that scene in particular, I highly recommend you go and watch the special bonus features on the Deadly Assassin DVD, and you'll learn a little bit more of what happened to that scene and how that was blamed by many people. Many people complained of that scene being highly violent and highly dangerous for any TV show. Doctor Who were blamed massively. They were heavily fined for that scene being featured, so they had to freeze the picture in order to stop children worried about the Doctor being drowned. The Doctor was a massive hero at that time, and for children to watch the Doctor being physically drowned, that is incredibly upsetting, and it would absolutely destroy many children's hearts to see the Doctor drown like that at the end of the story. It will give children nightmares. Incredibly upsetting, incredibly violent. So that's the reason why I love it. It's the fact that Doctor Who will go to some scale to make that this story could be the last of the Doctor. And they go all out with all of the cliffhangers, from assassinating the President to getting the Doctor run over by a train, by an illusion train, and the Doctor physically drowning. All 3 cliffhangers are so impactful, and this is the reason why I think that this is the greatest Master story of all time. Not just for the fact that they have impacted cliffhangers, but it's the fact that the Doctor's entering into the Matrix where he hasn't been before. He does not know what to expect. He knows he has to get out and destroy the signal at some point. By destroying Chancellor Goff, he breaks the connection and he has a chance to get out of the Matrix. But it's like a war in the Matrix. Him and Chancellor Goff were going at each other one by one, tactic after tactic. It was like a tactical genius masterclass from the Doctor and from Chancellor Goff. I think you've got to give both characters credit. I don't rate the Deadly Assassin amazing for characters. I think the Castellan and some other Tamils are pretty good, but all of the other characters, they're not important. The only important characters in the story are the Doctor, Chancellor Goff, the Master, and maybe Castellan, and that is it. Everyone else though, they're just background characters. So I don't heavily praise the story for characters nonetheless. I think for what the Master tend to do, for his survival, want to destroy the entire of the stellar system, and when you destroy that, it creates a black hole. And when the Master, in the final episode, had the sash of Rassilon, you knew that he was protected from the black hole effects. Because once you have the sash of Rassilon on, you are protected from being wiped out by a massive black hole. And you have balance to everything. But what the Master planned on doing, he was going to survive through the effects of the black hole and to cause the whole world to fracture time, to bring unbalance to the whole universe, to get his regenerations. That is what he had intention. But unfortunately, this was something that many people did not know. When you watched episode 1, did you not take into question more focus on why did the Doctor shoot the President in the first place? I said before, the targets were fixed. Even if the Doctor wanted to shoot the President, he couldn't. He couldn't move away and shoot somebody else. The targets were fixed. And as the targets were fixed, the target wasn't fixed on the President's head, nor his waist. It was targeted on the sash of Rassilon. And when you think about it, when the Doctor used that staser on the sash, it damaged it. So therefore the sash wouldn't protect the Master during the black hole effects. So when you think about it, the Master thought that he was going to survive because he had the extremist sort of like the sash of Rassilon to protect him, the overall material to help him protect himself from the overall black hole effect causes. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And in a way, the Doctor made sure that he told the Master that it's damaged, it won't protect you. And like, you lie! And then the Doctor pushed over the Master, and then they had a duel one-on-one, punching each other, pushing people down the stairs, pushing the Master through a chasm. As he falls down into the chasm, the Doctor managed to put the cables back onto the Eye of Harmony and reduced it down to its normal setting, its normal level. And that was the end of the Deadly Assassin. But no one really knew where the Master went. After when he fell down into the chasm with the sash of Rassilon, he had all that energy in the air, converting all of those regenerations. And even as the sash is a good converter, it could convert all of those regenerations. So that means he has more than we think. And in a way, the Master succeeded his plan. Even when the Doctor thought that he saved Gallifrey, the Master snuck away in his little grandfather clock. I love that grandfather clock. I think, and especially at the end of episode 4, you saw his crinkled, decaying face at the end in place of the grandfather clock. And as the credits settle in, you knew straight away that the Master succeeded at his plan. One of the only times that the Master tends to succeed on Gallifrey. That is possibly one of the best Doctor Who stories for any Master to be featured in. And knowing that his plan worked from episode 1 all the way to episode 4, most of the times when you see the Master's plan in a 1970s story with John Pertwee, you'd see the Master's plan would be foiled and then he would have a chance to get away, to escape. None of his plans would actually fully work to the best of his abilities. Obviously the Doctor would always foil his plans at the end. However, this is the first ever Doctor Who story that the Master's plan has actually worked. The Doctor thought that he stopped his plan, but no. The Master knew. The Master knew that he had more regenerations in him, which meant that his plan worked. And this is the reason why I think that this story is the greatest Master story of all time. Because I also judge Geoffrey Beevor's Master. who has a sort of similar appearance, but doesn't have the levels of drama, the stakes, like this episode. And I also have to commemorate Anthony Alien, Reginald Gardo, and all of the other masters in general. And I do think there are some incredible master stories. However, judging by the setting, judging by how the master was very, very clever to extract the Doctor's data extraction of killing the president and beaming it into the Doctor's mind. So the Doctor had no way in resisting this forecast, this foreshadowing of killing the president. He knew he had to go along with this bait. It's like bait, and the master has given the Doctor an incredible, irresistible bait. He can't refuse it. He knows he's entering in a trap, but even the Doctor knows that he is being framed for one particular reason, and he has to prove himself. In this story, he absolutely proves himself right, and in actual fact, he's one of the most intelligent minds in this entire story, along with the Master, who's incredibly genius in exotonics and mathematics. You have to really understand how all of these processes that the Time Lords have used, they're like child's play to the Master. You think all of this stuff is complicated? To the Master, this is like 1 + 1, 2 + 2. Other times, the Time Lords may find that this is some complex mathematics, whereas the Master, he's easy on this. No wonder the Master found it so easy to infiltrate these databanks, to get the Doctor's DNA and to get this message sent across him all through time and space in the TARDIS while he was still in Vortex. That is a still early foreshadowing in the story. You still got to remember that the Doctor left Sarah Jane behind. He had a message from Gallifrey. Do you know who sent that message in the Hand of Fear? Not the Time Lords, but the Master. The Master sent that message in the Hand of Fear. When the Doctor knew that he was like, I've got to send Sarah back, you know, and that sort of thing. You knew straight away that the Time Lords did not call the Doctor. Because if the Time Lords called the Doctor, why did the Doctor not was greeted with a welcome back? Or a, you know, great to see you again, Doctor. But they arrested him instead, and they treated him with so much little respect. So you've got to remember, the Master sent that message to not only bring the Doctor to Gallifrey, but to leave everyone else you love behind. Because truly enough, this is going to affect Gallifrey in many ways, shape or form. There's old scores to settle on Gallifrey, and unfortunately Gallifrey is involved with the Master and the Doctor. And going on a little bit more about the appearance on Peter Pratt's Master, when you look at him, his dialogue is so slow, and whenever a Master talks very, very slow, with impressive dialogue, there's a sense of fear I can't describe, but it's that sort of fear that sends shivers down your spine. And when you see crinkled, crispy, sort of decaying face, his arms, his get-up, everything is burnt, everything's cremated almost. And even his face, there's no proper identification of the Master. It's not a real face, it's sort of like a mask, but it's not really a mask. It's sort of like, it's got the bone structure, it's got the eyes, and like it has all of these scales. It's like the Master is no longer the Master. It's just a decaying body, but he still has that sinister tone of the Master. And in all honesty, looking at him, especially when he uses, oh, I almost forgot, and this is probably my favourite moment of this entire story, when the Doctor broke out of the Matrix and the Master knew that he was almost defeated. This is what he did. He used an anaesthetic to drug himself, to make himself appear seem dead. And then, do you know what he did? They took him to the graveyard area where all of the Time Lords were laying to rest, ready to be cremated. However, the Master woke up just in the nick of time where one of the guards was going to check on him, and the Master awoke. When you watch that back, you have to think, that is so fucking scary. I'm sorry to swear like that, but my word, I got goosebumps as soon as you saw his head rock up. It's like bloody The Undertaker's just come back alive. It is amazing. And you've got to give credit to the Master, using an anaesthetic drug to make him seem himself dead, and then come back, then steal the sash, and then locked the Doctor in the graveyard room with nowhere else to go, as the Master goes to the Panopticon and gets the Eye of Harmony all set up, ready for him to access all those regenerations. It's an amazing plan, and honestly, the Doctor literally felt he was on the edge of dying. Not only he was assassinating the President, committing the highest crime on Gallifrey, and yet he still says that he was innocent and he was framed of doing it. You still saw little moments here and there, like little deaths from Runcible, and you saw the deaths of the guards, the death of the technician, and the Doctor knew that someone on Gallifrey was destroying and twisting Gallifrey into the way that they wanted. And the Master, with his little shrinking devices, stabbing a knife through Runstable, it was so shocking to see those deaths. And yet even though those were characters that you did not care about, especially when you saw Runstable walking up towards the Doctor, he just fell to the ground and you saw the massive stab in the back. It's like, this is how terrifying Doctor Who is in the 70s. It's honestly terrifying. If any kids saw that, they'd be thinking, like, speechless, or even scared. Like, this is scary stuff that Doctor Who are doing. It's impactful. It's one of those only one stories that I think provides incredible scares, the brains of the Master, and using the brains, it's using all of the complex necessary skills of the Master, using to his own advantage, using for his own survival. And the Doctor already knows that the Master has a brilliant mathematical mind, even better than the Doctor's. So in a way, the Doctor knew that he was, beaten against already by the math skills. And yet even still, when the Master said he did all this, the Doctor even said to himself, wow, this time he surpassed himself. And it's incredible. For a Doctor Who's perspective, for the Doctor's perspective, he didn't even think that the Master could do all this. So the Master really went out of his way to create a forecast, a foreshadowing of assassinating the President and being into the Doctor's mind so that he can kill the President. And so that he can convict the charges to be executed. But like I said, when he provoked Article 17, he knew that he was safe for the time. But he still had to provide concrete evidence of the Master. And the only way that he can provide concrete evidence of the Master is by going into the Matrix, finding who's in league with the Master, and then finding the Master afterwards. But then, like I said, the Master was already drugged. He was appeared dead. And yet even still, the body was taken along to the graveyard. That's where the Master wanted to be taken. Because in there was the sash of Rassilon. That's what he wanted. And in a way, all he had to do was to get access to the key, and then the Eye of Harmony was his. But then all of the things came to fall back on each other. Just like when the Doctor shot the President in the little centre of the sash. It was damaged, which meant that the Master wasn't protected from the sash. It meant that the Doctor had a chance to back off the Master, battle him for a couple of minutes, and then see the Master fall into the chasm as the Doctor try and save Gallifrey by putting the Eye of Harmony back together or something. And that was the end. And in a way, when you see the Master leaving in his TARDIS and the Doctor leaving in his TARDIS, it's like the universe is not big enough for the both of them. And it makes you wonder that an episode like this on Gallifrey, with high stakes, with a Matrix so psychedelic and so complex with so many illusions, and a plan of the Master that has worked to perfection. I can't fault this episode. I can't fault this story. This story is literally the best Master story ever. I'll be shocked if you have very good reasons to tell me why The Deadly Assassin is not the greatest Master story of all time. Because, I mean, give me some honest proof. Like, if you've got another story out there which is better than this, then please comment down below. Please comment down below what is your greatest Master story in Doctor Who history. Thank you so much everyone for watching for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. Don't forget to like this video, share and subscribe for more Doctor Who content like this. If I have to give a rating of this story, what else am I going to give it? I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 because it bloody deserves it. This is the greatest Master story of all time, and one of the only Master's plans has ever worked. With a story with no companion, the Doctor by himself, isolated, vulnerable, That's the reason why the Master had to get the Doctor alone. Because he knew without the companion there, he knew the Doctor was vulnerable. And when you have a vulnerable Doctor, the Master can do so many things to you. It surprises the lot of us. Thank you so much everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed my in-depth review of The Deadly Assassin, and I will hopefully see you next time for a brand new Doctor Who video. Until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye!